This video is about Pompeii and Herculaneum mid-course exam feedback. So I'm not going to look at the multiple choice questions independently, but I'll explain those in class. I'm going to look at question 4. Question 4 asks you to look at 3 different sources and establish what we could establish about religion in Pompeii and Herculaneum from those sources. What people didn't do was they didn't talk individually about each individual source. You must refer to each source individually and independently. So for example, source A was an image of a household lararium, indicating that Pompeians undertook personal piety and that religious worship took place at home. Source B, the Temple of Isis, indicates that foreign Egyptian cults were also worshipped at Pompeii and Herculaneum along with Roman deities. Source C, the Forum map, shows that the Forum was a religious heart of Pompeii where most temples could be found. So what's important is that you look at, for each source that it gives you, you look at an individual point that you can come up with for each of those sources. So that's particularly important to get full marks for that 3-mark question. Question 8 was the Pompeian social structure with the 3 different sources. And what I've done here, if you can have a look, this was out of 6 marks, was I've broken it down into use of source and use of own knowledge. And the green is the use of the sources and the blue is the use of own knowledge. A lot of you were far too general and not specific enough in your approach to this question, and there wasn't enough use of terms, appropriate terms, and there wasn't enough use of the sources, and some people got well and truly sidetracked when they were on this question and started talking about religion and all these other unrelated things. So Pompeian society was structured hierarchically with an upper and lower strata and no clear middle class. The higher classes consisted of the senatorial elite of Rome, who often visited Pompeii, as well as the local political elite, wealthy merchants such as Gnaeus Aelius, source D, members of the equestrian class, and wealthy freedmen. The lowest classes consisted of poor free citizens, freedmen and slaves, such as the slaves of Gnaeus Aelius, source D. Women in Pompeii were provided with more social freedom in Pompeii than in Rome itself, and this is evident in source F, which depicts a statue of Eumarchia, a wealthy female merchant and a public priestess who prospered in Pompeii. Other women in Pompeii, such as Julia Felix, also prospered as wealthy landlords, such as Gnaeus Aelius in source D. The wealthy members of society often became patrons of the lower classes, often supporting them financially. Their clients would then support their patron politically. This relationship between the classes is evident in source E, where a patron pays homage to a client upon his death. Source E also indicates a relationship between the wealthy and their slaves. Presumably the freedman in source E purchased his freedom from and became the client of his ex-master, thus indicating that there was some social mobility in the Pompeian social structure. The indication that this client never desired to steal anything also suggests that many clients and slaves were entrusted with money by their patrons and masters, although this cannot be seen as a typical of such relationships. The role of slaves is also indicated in source D, where Gnaeus Aelius is utilising his slave to support him in his business enterprises. So what's really important is that we're using all of the different sources. Sources D, E and source F need to be referred to, and you need to refer to them specifically. You need to quote from them where it's appropriate to quote, and you need to be really, really specific in your reference to the sources. You also need to balance that out with reference to your own knowledge. And what's really important for this question is not to look at the question by trying to look at each source. What you want to try and do is answer the question and use the sources to answer the question rather than trying to answer the question with the sources. So answer the question and utilise the sources to support your answer to that question. Okay, the last one, this is based on Joe's response, is about 360 words. And what I've done here is I've put it in different colours. The green is judging statements, the blue is references to sources, the yellow is Italian efforts, and the purple is international efforts. And we can see here, just by having a look at the colour, that Joe's put a great deal of effort into ensuring that he's covering all aspects of the question, and he's broken it up into 2 sections. The first is the Italian contributions, and the second is the international contributions. So if we have a look here, we've got Italian and international contributions and responsibilities have had a profound impact on the issue of conservation at Pompeii and Herculaneum, P&H. For instance, not only did the Italian government allow all revenue to remain in Pompeii's budget, source G, it also increased funding using its own national budget. It also blocked off streets to the Via dell'Abbondanza and began focusing on conservation instead of reconstruction, source G. These contributions have greatly assisted the ancient city. Furthermore, the Italian Central Institute for Cataloguing has undertaken a complete documentation of 1800 mosaics and frescoes, and Neapolis has produced an extensive map of the site. These have been remarkably positive in assisting conservation at P&H. For example, the Italian experts have utilised this information to conserve gardens such as the House of the Faun, as well as to produce replicas such as plaster casts. These have had a positive impact on P&H, allowing conservation to prevail whilst at the same time sustaining public interest. This has generated greater revenue for the site, which it can keep, SourceG. International contributions have also had a profound impact on conservation at P&H. For instance, the Herculaneum Conservation Project seeks to address the issues of conservation at Herculaneum. It is a $100 million partnership which has effectively initiated a three-stage plan for the city. This includes preventative and emergency conservation, analysis of the nature and extent of the damage, as well as a detailed documentation of remains. Furthermore, it has constructed roofing over affected areas and undertakes preventative conservation on houses such as the House of Bicentenary. However, as Andrew Wallace-Hadrill explains, this might be a losing battle, SourceG. This was evident in 2010 when the Gladiator Dome collapsed. Nevertheless, other international contributions such as the Pompeii Forum Project and the House of Menanda Project aim to conserve these public and private buildings in an attempt to preserve them for the future. These have been effective aids in shifting focus from reconstruction to conservation, SourceG. Contributions have been profoundly positive, regardless of the fact that they may be fighting a losing battle. So you can see how there's been a balance of source use, using your own knowledge, ensuring that you're addressing both Pompeii and Herculaneum, ensuring that we're providing relevant detail from our own knowledge on other areas apart from what is mentioned in the sources. So we can't just use what's in the source, we have to go above and beyond that by providing our own examples. And Joe does that quite well by discussing these other factors such as the House of Bicentenary, the House of Menanda, the Pompeii Forum Project, the Herculaneum Conservation Project, Neapolis, and all these things are above and beyond what we needed to talk about. Also the Italian Central Institute for Cataloguing, and he provides enough detail here and enough use of the sources to be able to get a high mark in this question. A lot of you got very well sidetracked in this. Some of you didn't use or refer to the sources at all, or you just used the sources and didn't provide any of your own knowledge. Now, if you do that, you're going to get below 5. Okay, so it's really important that you are responding in depth to these questions. Okay, I hope that helped.